This is Asia Rosier vibing on TikTok after she beat her 3-year-old daughter so badly that her liver exploded. And no, that is not internet gossip. That is a medical examiner's quote. Her baby Jewel was covered in bruises. And yet, Asia's only explanation was she was tired, at least at first. What really happened to Jewel that night will break you. From the 911 call to the autopsy photos to the police interrogations, where both mom and boyfriend crumble. We're telling the story they tried to spin. This is the tragic case of Jewel Howard and the sickening story of the mom who went on TikTok after torturing her baby to death. April 11th, 2013. Jewel Howard had just turned 3. She was supposed to be at daycare that morning. Instead, she was on a filthy couch inside this house, wheezing as she struggled to breathe. By the time her mother, Asia Rosier, finally asked for help, it was already too late. But let's rewind to that night, the last night baby Jewel ever lived. Asia said she picked up Jewel from her grandmother's house around 8 p.m. Back home, she gave her a quick bath because Jewel said she was sleepy. That detail matters, and you'll see why in a bit. Asia would later tell police that Jewel had thrown up and complained of stomach pain. Probably just asthma, she said. That was her explanation for everything. After using the toilet, Jewel didn't cry or call out for her mom. She just looked tired, so Asia tucked her into a makeshift pallet on the floor. Asia would tell this story over and over again during her hour-long interrogation.
My baby did not cry. My baby didn't tell me nothing was wrong. All my baby said is, "Mommy, I'm sleepy."
Except internally, her daughter was bleeding to death. Asia claimed Jumar, her boyfriend, had to hold Jewel's neck so it wouldn't snap. Asia said that she had to leave for a work meeting and lied to police that a relative, Denisha Mitchell, came over to watch the kids. In truth, Jumar was left alone with them, a direct violation of child protection orders, as he was under investigation for hurting Jewel before. As hours passed, Jewel's condition worsened. At 10 a.m., Jumar finally made the call. "My niece is non-responsive," he told dispatch. "Her breathing is real slow, and she won't open her eyes." Asia was there too by then, sounding just as confused about Jewel's state. By the time paramedics arrived, Jewel was not breathing.
Then the baby, like, she threw up some vomit going down my back, but it wasn't like, you know how you throw up and it's like chunks of throw up? It was just like liquid, just went down my back.
During the same interrogation, Jumar recounted how he felt as Jewel's body went limp on his shoulder.
I see her there, I'm like, oh my God, please don't tell me this baby just died on my shoulders.
This baby, not Jewel. Remember this later. Jumar handed her to the EMTs and the ambulance rushed to the hospital. Asia followed behind, hysterical. By this point, Jumar had called her to tell her what was happening, but according to multiple witnesses, her version of hysterical looked more like shock than grief. At 11:30 a.m., doctors at the emergency room pronounced Jewel Howard dead. The trauma team worked fast. They tried CPR, oxygen, fluids, and everything that was in their power, but nothing worked. Then came the part no parent should ever have to witness: the silence when the medical staff stops trying. But the doctors wouldn't let them off with a hug. They had many, many questions for these two. You see, Jewel's liver had ruptured. Her ribs were broken so bad that you could see weird shapes coming out of her little body. How the hell did Asia think she could explain these with asthma? Did she think the doctors or the investigators were dumb? As the detective doctor told Asia directly,
"Okay, it had nothing to do with anything natural."
Asia acted confused. She told police she didn't know what happened.
I want them to look deeper into. I want a full autopsy done. This is why I really came down.
Okay.
They did a preliminary.
Right.
I want a full one done.
Then she toned it down, asking the detective for his opinion on Jewel's cause of death.
How is that possible? She had been sick for so long.
I know she'd been sick, but she had some very horrible injuries to her. And listen, it was nothing natural.
Watch her try to pull off a thinking face as she looks genuinely confused about Jewel's death. But that didn't last long because throughout her first interrogation, Asia came up with several working theories.
The one on the side of her head right there?
Her sister did it.
What's that?
Her sister did it. My baby
Well,
scratched her.
But the investigator already knew what that injury was.
that's not a scratch according to the doctor, okay?
Well, what is that?
He's saying it is a bruise as a result of being hit with something.
As you guys probably know, that is a blunt force trauma charge. And yeah, that was listed as Jewel's cause of death, but again, Asia did not realize the police already had enough evidence to suspect her of homicide. So, she was not done making excuses. Next, she tried to blame her grandma's house, saying maybe Jewel had fallen earlier while playing there.
How can they say it didn't happen in her grandma's house? I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
But did you hear what I said? She couldn't have been out walking around and acting normally with the type of injuries that I've showed you she had. It wouldn't be possible.
The investigators already knew. Jewel didn't collapse at Grandma Tiffany's. She collapsed after spending the night under Asia's roof. She was bathed and put to bed there, even as she was barely dragging her feet. And when Asia got up the next morning, she still didn't call for help. She called Children's First Daycare to say Jewel would be an hour late. But why? Because Jewel wasn't just tired, she was unresponsive. She couldn't hold her head up, and she didn't have the strength to walk anymore.
Everything you did the next morning makes no sense.
Asia flailed. She said she thought Jewel just needed fresh air. She said she didn't know how serious it was, and that she'd driven her daughter around before during asthma attacks, and it always helped. But even she should have known that an asthma attack doesn't make a kid limp.
When I got back, like I told her, she was lethargic. She was weak. She was weak. There's no way I was gonna let her go to school like that.
Sensing that she was digging her own grave, Asia made up another lie. She told police that she left Jewel in the care of a responsible adult, her cousin, Denisha, when she went to her work meeting. That was a lie. She left Jewel with Jumar, and DCF had already told her Jumar was not allowed to be alone with the kids. The police already knew this, and they knew she knew how bad Jewel looked that morning. The detective pushed Asia harder by appealing to her empathy.
Because the damage, the blow I showed you there, the blow that he's saying is like a car accident type blow to her abdomen.
Asia just stood there, poker-faced, as if she still didn't understand how that could have happened to her baby.
That's what damaged her liver, caused the bleeding inside. Okay. And once that started, all the blood's right here. It's all bleeding inside her right there. Do you know how painful that would have been? She had to be crying or something.
Asia's last lie was that the doctors probably broke Jewel's ribs during the CPR procedure. The truth was about to come out, and it would be as painful as the truth can be. Jumar's version of events matched Asia's in some ways, but somehow raised even more red flags. He admitted to bathing Jewel the night before, said she vomited blood. His first thought?
Say call her grandma and see what she ate over.
When Tiffany told them you don't vomit blood from bad chicken, Asia and Jumar were happy with sleeping it off. That's when Jumar said he left and went to his mother's house. The next morning, he said he returned and found Jewel not moving much. Still no 911 call, and even then they didn't rush to the ER. Asia said she wanted to drive her there herself. A random man walking by and hearing the drama inside the house offered to call 911. That's when the ambulance was finally summoned, and it gets even wilder. Jumar tried CPR as instructed by the 911 dispatcher.
The 911, she was like, put your finger up. No, I'm not touching her nose. I'm not doing anything to her. I was just really hold her until the ambulance get here.
To give you some context, the police had already done some digging on Jumar's past at the time of this interrogation. So they knew that he had a history of violence and how DCF had told him to stay away from children. Asia's own aunt, Diane Jenkins, had witnessed Jumar assault Asia. One day she arrived at Asia's home and was still in her truck when she saw Jumar hit Asia on the side of the head so hard that she collapsed on the ground. However, when Diane asked Asia about her relationship with Jumar, Asia said it was none of her business. Why would Asia protect this guy after what he had done to her? Slowly but surely, this was the theory that was taking shape at the police station too. Asia was protecting him at all costs, even after he'd taken Jewel's life in a fit of rage. Later, Asia admitted she'd lied about Denisha watching the kids. She just didn't want to get in trouble with DCF. DCF had previously investigated Asia for a cut on Jewel's lip. Asia had told doctors that she bit herself in anger. When the nurse asked Jewel who gave her the boo-boo, she said, "I did it myself." But later she said Jumar did it, as he was mad at her for leaving the house. For detectives, that meant that both Asia and Jumar were responsible for this.
I think you're protecting Jamar, so I think, hey, I know it's...
Why would it protect him from what?
So the investigator had to lay it all out, protect him from arrest after he unalived Jewel.
Hell no. Why would I protect him over my child? Hell no.
I don't know.
Shit.
That's why I asked you. That's why I asked you if he was afraid of it.
No, I'm not afraid of him.
So while Asia was saying nothing, investigators were busy talking to the rest of Jewel's family. So let's talk about Jewel's biological father for a second. When the police contacted him with the tragic news, he was devastated, but he was also so angry. And he had a lot of things to say about Jumar and the DCF. He had seen the bruises on Jewel before, on her thigh, even on her face, and he told police. Since Jumar came into the picture, Jewel never wanted to go home with Asia. A school bus driver and a family friend said if someone even mentioned her mother was coming, Jewel would become hysterical. She did not want to go home, and yet, home is where she died. The day that Jewel lost her life, DCF moved fast. They immediately removed Jemiah, Jewel's 6-month-old sister, from that home. That's the 6-month-old who Asia blamed for unaliving Jewel. But anyone who's ever loved Jewel is left with the lingering question: why are Child Protective Services fast only after a child dies? The police moved fast too. While investigators were listening to Asia and Jumar lie through their teeth, other investigators were connecting the dots and waiting for the autopsy results.
I want them to look deeper into. I want a full autopsy done. This is why I really came down.
Okay.
They did a preliminary.
Right.
I want a full one done.
Asia also promised the detectives that she would take a polygraph test to prove that she never laid a hand on her baby.
Would you be willing to come back sometime at a later point in time maybe and take a polygraph exam to show you had nothing to do with the injuries to Jewel?
Yes.
However, there is no evidence she followed up on that. And she didn't need to, because before long she would be dragged into the police station under arrest. Once the autopsy confirmed what the ER team already suspected, that Jewel had died from massive blunt force trauma, the state attorney's office made its move. Asia Rosier and Jumar Edwards were both arrested and charged with child neglect, resulting in great bodily harm. Here's where their infuriating interrogations hurt the case, because neither Asia nor Jumar would accept responsibility. The prosecution couldn't prove who dealt the fatal blow, so they went after what they could prove, and that neither one of them called 911 until it was far too late.
Do you understand why you're here on the neglect charge?
No.
Okay. Because no one got her medical attention.
These two continued to play dumb all the way to the trial. And perhaps they were dumb, at least because they didn't realize this wouldn't set them free. On March 22nd, 2014, Asia was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Jumar got 15 because it was his name on the 911 call. Jumar is scheduled to be released in 2026. Asia is already out and going viral on TikTok. For a while, it looked like Jewel's story might disappear under the weight of red tape. The charges were light, the evidence was messy, not to mention the lack of confession. And most people didn't even hear about it until this year, until Asia logged back online. Because what did she do with her second chance at life? She opened a TikTok account.
So what does it mean when you're scrolling on your For You page and everybody on your For You page is saying add friend?
Today, Asia's lip syncing, dancing, posting thirst traps, and bragging about her nails. She describes herself as God's girl, entrepreneur, a wife, boss lady, content creator, motivational speaker. God's girl, not former inmate, mother of a dead baby, or woman who lied to the police while her baby's liver exploded. Motivational speaker? What exactly does she think she's motivating? Survival after negligence? how to rebrand after a felony. You guys, scroll through her videos and you will find there isn't one single mention of Jewel. No photo, no name, not even 5 seconds of Asia saying she misses her daughter. Or daughters, plural. Yeah, there's no word about Jemiah either. Where is Jemiah now? Is she being raised by Grandma Tiffany? Bounced through foster homes? We don't know, but we know she's living with the unimaginable trauma of having the family that she does. Asia Rosier didn't just let one daughter die and abandon the other. She buried them again, digitally and publicly. She rewrote her timeline so that Jewel's name doesn't even show up. And in doing so, she made sure that the world forgot who really mattered. But we haven't forgotten. Not Jewel, not Jemiah, and not any child destroyed by the people meant to protect them. Watch our next case, another monster, another victim, another story that refuses to be buried.